this is attorney Sarah Holmes of Holmes Business Law P.C. We are a business and trademark law firm that also provides general counsel subscription services to business owners. Today we're talking about Payroll Compliance 101, what every small business owner should know. Now, we know from experience that when a small business owner goes to hire employees for the first time, one of their major sources of pain and problems comes from payroll. First of all, most business owners have no idea how to pay employees. They're not sure sometimes what to pay them. They're not sure about the taxes to be taken out. They're not sure if they need to pay them benefits, and they have all kinds of questions surrounding payroll. So our first number one tip would be to get a really good payroll company, like something where you can pick up the phone and talk to a human being. We have a lot of clients that like to use some online service providers where the payroll is done through an internet company. I would tell you that if you run into any types of problems and you need the payroll company's help in resolving them, such as with taxes, you may not get the level of help and service that you would want. There are also giant payroll conglomerate providers where you're gonna potentially run into the same problem, where if you start getting notices from the city or the state about payroll taxes being not paid correctly, not being paid on time, and you pick up the phone and you want to talk to someone at one of these places to try to get them to resolve it for you, you may be upset to find out that these people are not there, they don't have your back, and you are on your own to resolve problems. The best way to handle that would be to find a local payroll company where you can develop a relationship with them. You know the people working there, they know you, they know your business, and if you do run into problems, you can pick up the phone and call them. Now, the other alternative to this would be to use something that's a PEO, which is an employer service organization. And that essentially is a company that will agree to do all these filings under their EIN and basically be responsible and liable for a lot of the payroll and taxes that have to be withheld and any mistakes that would be made. The difference is that the PEO can be a lot more expensive than just using a payroll company, but it may be worth your while if you only have a few employees to look at the differences and the cost structure. Now, when you are going to pay employees, the biggest thing you have to do is to be compliant with local, state, and federal wage and hour laws. And by that, I mean making sure you are paying people at least minimum wage, making sure that you are adhering to overtime payments. Now, a lot of people think that overtime means that anyone getting paid a salary is not subject to overtime. That's not true. Maybe that was the case 50 years ago, but not anymore. There are plenty of positions that are salaried positions where those people working would still be entitled to overtime. You have to look very carefully at the duties that someone is performing and whether or not the minimum payments being made to them would in fact make them exempt from overtime or not. So that's number one to know, is the overtime. Secondly, is you have to pay people on a schedule, and that schedule needs to be consistent. So if you start out paying people weekly, you have to keep paying people weekly. If you pay them monthly, you have to pay them monthly. But they need to get paid on the schedule that you disclose to them, and you have to adhere to that. Now, as far as benefits, there are not necessarily benefits that you have to give to people. Now, certain places have requirements for sick time, right? There are potentially sick time requirements. There's one in Philadelphia. You need to consult with an attorney as to whether your business, that has to be paid or unpaid time to people. It depends on how many employees you have. But in terms of benefits, everyone now in the US is required to have health insurance. That was part of the Obamacare Act, but it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be employer provided. So if you do start to give your employees certain benefits, you do want to make sure that you're at least offering those benefits consistently across the board so that you wouldn't be, accused of any type of discrimination by your employees. The other thing to think about is PTO and holidays. That might be things that you want to check and have disclosed on the paychecks. So you really want to make sure that when you're hiring employees, you're using proper documents. Number one, you're using an offer letter that's going to very clearly set out what this person is going to be paid, whether or not they're going to be paid overtime, what their working hours are, and what types of benefits and time off they can expect. Now, when you get to the point where you have more than, let's say, 5 or 6 employees, you want to think about having an employment handbook. And in the handbook, you can have much more in-depth descriptions of some of the benefits, the policies, and how you want to run your employment. Now, the last thing your payroll service provider needs to do, obviously, is withhold proper taxes. One thing to understand is that as an employer, Most business people would assume that if they have an LLC or corporation set up, they then cannot be held personally liable for things that the LLC or the corporation does. Big exception to this is a failure to withhold and pay proper employment taxes, and also potentially failure to pay wages properly, as well as sometimes discrimination issues. Those are things that you as a business owner could potentially be on the hook for personally, not even just the business entity, but you personally. So it's very, very important that you get payroll right, you get the taxes right, you get the withholdings right. And again, that's why it's so important to work with a very reputable payroll company, someone local that you can talk to and get good service out of, or use a PEO that agrees to accept some of that liability on your behalf. There's also, of course, different types of employer insurance policies you can get to help you out if you were to run into a claim that may cover you, and you can look into that type of coverage as well. Of course, if you have questions about certain employment issues, you need some documents done, offer letters, handbooks, feel free to reach out to our office. Our number is 215-482-0285. Thanks.